YellowTelescope's YellowTelecast, the best practices for the best practices, providing the medical industry's best practices to the medical industry's best practices since 2008. Are you a doctor? Do you work for a doctor? Do you want to earn more, be more efficient, retain your team, hire for success, or just want to have a better lifestyle? I bet you do. What should you expect from the podcast? A lighthearted, casual, fun, hopefully funny, informative, impactful, well-founded look at the medical industry from a pair of passionate, competent, confident, experienced, talented, questionably good-looking, unquestionably good-looking industry leaders, men of the Renaissance, if you will, and even if you won't, who enjoy Scotch whiskey, world travel, music, single malt Scotch whiskey, fine dining, not fine dining, family, art, and Ryan bourbon whiskeys while implementing intensive training and expert staffing, resulting in unparalleled growth. Listen to the podcast, and for more on how YellowTelescope can help you grow, visit YellowTelescope.com for upcoming events, published articles, recorded speeches, past issues of our complimentary email newsletter, testimonials, and more.
All right, here we go. Hi, Ed. How you doing?
Doing all right. Surviving, thriving. Here we are in the great indoors.
It's exciting. It's our 25th YellowTelescope, YellowTelecast, Best Practices for the Best Practices podcast, if you will. And honestly, even if you won't.
I choose to, upon my own volition. It's great to be here, John. We've been doing this with some more frequency than in months and years past. I think one of my favorite Hoffisms was we always do a podcast consistently every 1 month to 1 year.
It's really a true story. And this is an exciting one, I've got to tell you, not just because of the interesting nature of it, doing it from our respective homes with our lovely artwork in the background for those of you guys watching this in YouTube land versus those of you guys listening to it in podcast land. But we're making this not only to be our 25th episode for the masses, but also because we were requested by our good friends at Informa Markets, who run the Aesthetic Show, who run Vegas Cosmetic Surgery Meeting, who run the Miami Cosmetic Surgery Meeting. We've been fortunate enough to speak at a couple of those meetings pretty regularly, and we wanted to pay back to them for all they've done for us with giving them some kudos and encouraging everyone to go to their next meeting, and also sharing some content with their followership across the country. So we're going to be recording and hoping to say hello to some of their fine folks as well. So hello out there. We're Jon and Ed from YellowTelescope.
That's right. We're really excited. We've been talking to dozens of practices over the past few weeks, and so we've got some pretty timely information we hope will help. And also kind of going along with our standard podcast YellowTelecast format, which we started, 5 years ago, I think?
Yeah, basically, I was doing a podcast for Real Self earlier today. Our friends over there, a shout out to them. And that we realized we've been doing these podcasts since 2014. So this is not new to us. And you can, of course, download it and sign up for it on Spotify for free, on iTunes Store, App Stores, Google Play, pretty much everywhere. But yes, I interrupted you briefly, but I want to run through kind of what our game plan is for today. But you were saying first.
We originally started this back in 2014. Thank you for correcting me, sir. As a bit of an outlet, simply because we are very serious, extremely serious all day, every day. And at the same time, like to have a little bit of an outlet to share some of that serious information, but in a more lighthearted, casual way. Of course, you and I go back about 2 decades, occasionally enjoy a whiskey, and thought, why not we share our love for the mother's milk, the whiskey of Scotch, and at the same time, sort of wax philosophical about what we can be doing for practice, what they can be doing.
That's right. And so for those of you guys who are joining us for the first time, and thank you for 60 seconds, those of you guys who are diehards, for listening to our outline. What we do on each one of these podcasts is we're going to be giving you guys actionable, implementable ideas that you at your practice can take in tomorrow and start making money with. But we do it in a little bit of a fun way. So for example, our topics today are really threefold. First, we're going to be talking not just about getting virtual consultations, but also how to convert them into procedures, treatments, and surgery at a much higher percentage. For example, every practice that we worked with for a long period of time since 2008 averages between a 60 and 95% same-day booking ratio for surgery. And we've been able to translate that to essentially all of our clients on virtual consultations as well. So we're going to give you some tips and ideas on really monetizing those virtual consults. Number 2, we're going to be giving you some ideas and tips on reopening as we do get a little closer to the economy opening. Each state has a different timeline, but over the next 0 to 2 months, we're going to be back open, and how do we do that in such a way to maximize revenue while maximizing safety. And then third, we're going to touch a little bit on what's really working right now in terms of marketing and social media. And social media marketing is really working. Our sister company, Ice Cream Social Media, is really growing through Corona and getting more and more clients and more business. We're going to talk about just a couple of hot new topics and things that are working there, why it's a great time to rebuild your website, why it's a great time to get going with TikTok marketing. Now, we are going to get to that education, but we do this for fun. Like Ed said, we're very, very, very serious business consultants. We run arguably one of, if not the most successful consulting businesses in the plastic surgery and cosmetic industry since 2008. We just won Best Places to Work in South Florida, and we just won the Financial Times 500 Fastest Growing Companies in North America. So we're dead serious, guys, and humble. But also we like to have a little bit of fun. And this has always been our outlet. So because we are connoisseurs of single malt Scotch whiskey and like little fun, crafty bourbons, we always open a new bottle on these, and we get to make it a little bit of fun as well. And that'll be kind of the game plan for today. So before we dive into some education, we do need to have a quick review of what we're having. What's on pour? Ed, as we said in the last podcast, lives out that window over there and about 200 feet across the intracoastal waterways of Miami Beach where we live. So if you're watching us on YouTube or on our website, he's right over there and I'm right over here.
Yep.
So what are you drinking over there, even though I can't come over and give you a big hug?
I know, well, at least not yet, John, and I look forward to the warm embrace as soon as this all passes. We're going with a little nostalgia here, and dove into the bar and found this is very special. This is one I was actually waiting for a special occasion to open, and I thought to myself, why don't we toast to the future success for all of our clients and all the practices out there. So I thought, what better way to celebrate? Brought this back from Scotland. Actually filled the bottle myself at the Balbini distillery when we were celebrating your birthday just last year. Can't wait to travel internationally again. I'm going to take a trip back in time and overseas through the glass.
Yeah, it is exciting. It's kind of fun to reminisce. And I think the regular days will be back soon enough. It's not going to be a big year for travel, but man, what an exciting time for me to celebrate with you. And I think 37 of my other friends in Scotland and stay in that castle and visit arguably my favorite distillery, Balbini there. So what do you actually have there that you're going to be sipping? It looks like a very small bottle, little tiny guy. And you said you took that straight from the cask, got to pour your own. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So we had the opportunity on a private tour. I think 5 of us got to tour the entire distillery from the grain to all the way through maturation in the cask. And unfortunately wasn't allowed to take any photos simply because, what with the static electricity actually, in that charged environment, potentially lighting the whole place up with what with the alcohol fumes.
Yeah,
so,
wasn't that they said there's that much alcohol fumes in the barn, in the warehouses, or whatever, that even your phone can light everyone on fire. So no photos.
That's right. But if you want to remember it, here's your memento. And we got the opportunity to take what they call a copper dog, which is basically like an actual copper tube that you drop down into the barrel and draw back up on a chain like a leash. That's what they call it, the copper dog, where originally the distillers would actually have a little copper dog just tucked into their boot, just in case you need a little wee nip, take the chill off in the afternoon. And but these days they use it for the fill. And this is a first fill sherry butt. It's a 13-year-old. And so it was filled basically in 2006. They put it there in the cask, 62% alcohol. So seems like rocket fuel, but that sherry butt, which is an ex-sherry cask, and the butt actually refers to the size of the cask, which can also affect the flavor, will really round it out. So I'm excited. I mean, we actually did get to try this. Where they don't even give you a glass at the distillery. They actually have you cup your hands just like this and just sort of sip like that. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to try this out of the glass for the first time since
Well, it's amazing. I hope you enjoy it. I wish I could try it. What's amazing is, like they said, the sherry butt is sort of a smaller cask, although we've heard that there are some plastic surgeons looking to buy into whiskey distilleries. And what they do is they take the sherry butt and they just inject it and it gets bigger. That's right. That's what I was told, Ed. I was told.
It's not a Brazilian butt lift or fat transfer. It's a Scotch whiskey sherry butt enhancement. That's what they call it.
Well, I love it. Well, it's a special bottle, and I already drank the one I brought home. What I have today is something very, very fun as well. I will be sipping on the Aaron Malt 21-year-old. So Aaron Malt is actually one of the scotches, one of the single malts from one of the various islands sort of towards the west coast, kind of the opposite way of Speyside where Balbini is, which is north and east. This is sort of south and west. It's not going to be smoky like a lot of your Lagavulins and Lafroigs and other smoky peaty whiskeys, but it is aged at 21 years. It is also sherry cask, but they use old sherry cask to do it, so it's going to be less red, less robust, and it's supposed to be a little spicy, a little sweet. We'll see kind of what it comes out as. Some chocolate on the palate, they suggest. It is brought back from my trip. I did buy it there. Comes in a nice little souvenir case and so on. It is non-chill filtered, which means they don't get rid of the ability for it to fog with a little ice or temperature change in return for keeping more of the original flavors inside. So we'll see if it's any good. It's sort of unfindable in the US currently, although they may get it here. It is part of their regular range. But looking even on my apps and so on, I can only find one bottle in America for around $300, even though probably in Europe it goes about 120 pounds. But then you have to add in the new 25% tariff that was added to all Scotch whiskey for no particular reason, and so forth. So the second thing I wanted to mention before I really dive in is, for the first time I'm featuring, I usually drink it out of a Glencairn glass with a little ice and a nice rocks glass. But one of the other things I brought back for those of you guys in YouTube land is this, which is a very small traditional portable drinker. That comes with 2 or 3 or 4 or 8 or 10 of these little metal things, little metal shooters. And they're not really meant to shoot, you're meant to sip out of them. But these are sort of not what you drink what I'm drinking out of. You don't drink a 21-year-old, fine whiskey in these. But for the average Scottish person or American in Scotland who just can't wait to get to a bar or simply can't get home to get a glass, you have sort of a portable a holder of a small party in your pocket with little baby sippers that you can pour your whiskey in. And so I got it in the traditional Scottish garment, almost like a kilt garment with little metal sippers. So I'll be taking my beverage as we sip slowly throughout the conversation in my little Scotch taster.
Indeed. Cheers. To you. Cheers.
That is a tasty whiskey. Just to sort of wash that down.
Wow.
Everything as advertised, very smooth due to the age. It is 46% alcohol by volume, so strong by vodka standards, but weak by Ed's rocket fuel standards over there. By 8% more, and it still wouldn't cure COVID. But 8% more, and it would be the level of rubbing alcohol you'd need to kill it. So careful over there, buddy.
Yeah, you got it, man. That's why it's a sipper.
So let's learn, let's do stuff, right? Let's talk about some things. So the first thing that we want to dive in on is the idea of virtual consultation. So one of the things, just in terms of history, as we're recording this in sort of late April heading into May, we're probably about, depending on the market, 35 to 75% through the sort of lockdown period. And just a couple states are actually even opening this week. They're like 95% of the way there. And so we have a ways to go in some markets, but even if you're in a market that's basically reopening and you're able to at least see patients live, we really think this is actionable, implementable information to be used for years to come for 2 reasons. One is, although technically on paper different economies will open, there are still going to be a majority of people that are a little skittish, particularly if they're older or have pre-existing conditions or have reasons that they don't want to go outside. And other people just feel that way out of fear. And so if they're going to take their time and go out, they're going to want to, A, make sure things are safe, which we're going to talk about later. But B, many of them may still prefer a virtual consultation. So that's one of the reasons we want to talk about it. Second, even if we're seeing live people, virtual consultations have been a part of the industry for many, many years. When I was a patient coordinator for 7 years, we had 70% of our patients flying in from all 50 states and 79 different countries. We regularly did virtual consultations in the early 2000s. That was just what was done. And back then, I think it was Skype or other methodologies, but we've been using this for out-of-state and out-of-country patients, which so many of our listeners have, to make sure we can do that virtual medicine in a way that makes sense. So we want to talk about not just how do we schedule virtual consultations, that's pretty easy. You can ask a lot of people if they want one. But one of the things you'll notice is when you ask a lot of them, many of them will say, well, we'll just wait. I'll just wait till you get back open. Shouldn't be more than a month or 2 or 3. And if it's 10 months, it's 10 months. And so how do we overcome those objections? And then second, if you're doing virtual consultations, you may or may not be booking that many surgeries from them. And in our offices, nationally and internationally, we are booking consistently, again, 50%, 70%, 90% plus same day. And in many offices this last week, 100%. In places like Houston and even in Long Island, we went 100%, one of the hardest hit places by Corona. So I want to teach you guys some actionable tips on how to do so.
Yep. Well, I think it's well said, Jon. And of course, we've been talking to dozens of practices just to, about exactly how these things are going. We put out a lot of voice messages and a lot of guidance to all of our clients on the specific types of processes that they can be using. And it has so much to do with the psychology, right? Right now, we've got so much urgency to be able to build when it comes to surgical schedules. So the practices that are being proactive and really doing it right are getting very, very booked out. And so we're actually able to not even necessarily offer the option of a virtual consultation, but when helping the patient to determine the potential time frame for their procedure based on cost, recovery, and of course, presuming that they're an excellent candidate, they love the doctor, and we are able to open to treat patients sooner than later, we're able to build a tremendous amount of urgency, because if they said, well, gosh, I'll just wait until I can come in for a live consult, which will be, as we'll talk about, we'll be doing anyway, even with a virtual consultation, of course, confirm candidacy, et cetera, they really don't have the option to necessarily wait, because if they have a virtual consultation today, maybe in some of our clients, maybe they'll get a spot June, maybe July, in some cases, not even as soon as August or September. So if they wait until they can have a virtual consultation in a few weeks from now, for example, they may be pushed out months beyond that, in some cases into next year. So we really are able to be very directive, and the attitude is being positive and service-oriented, but just giving them the reality of the situation that you're hoping to have your procedure in the next 90 days, let alone in the year 2020. This is how we do the consult, and includes virtual.
Yeah, and I think so much of what we start off with here at YellowTelescope as a company is very much the psychology, the why behind what we're doing, which I think you pretty eloquently outlined. And what we're really trying to do is take that paradigm, take their mindset and shift their paradigm, shift their mindset. I know the way I'd feel right now if I wasn't familiar with plastic surgery, but I was considering having a procedure, which is the same way everyone feels. I would assume you're closed, because you probably are. Now, yeah, you have virtual consultations, but how would I know that? So I assume you're closed. Second, I assume that you are not busy. In fact, you're dying. You're going out of business. You have no money. Everything's terrible. The world's ending. And C, I would expect to not only contact you, but I would contact you once you're open, and then I'd negotiate hard. Not because I'm necessarily someone who always wants a deal or always wants to say, but I would just see an opportunity. And people subconsciously are predatory that way. If they see an opportunity to pay a little less, they're going to take the opportunity to pay a little less. And what we do in a single conversation is change that mindset to, actually, we're busy. Actually, you'll be lucky to even get a date, and forget about discounting. And what we've done is that for our practices. And for those of you guys who, again, are joining your very first podcast, aren't real familiar with what we do, we have 3 companies. One matches you to high quality web vendors for free. One of them does social media, and then YellowTelescope is basically a consulting company that's been around since 2008. And what we do is really work with practice managers and patient coordinators and salespeople and staff to help you guys maximize your business, improve booking ratios, improve efficiency, improve patient follow-up, improve a use of computer systems. And our track record, quite honestly, is quite good. And so we're teaching these processes, and that's why literally over 90% of our clients are booked out a month or more. Most of them 2, 3, 4, 5 months. Literally, our non-invasive med spas and so on are booked out weeks in general. And so that's the psychology behind it. So what I want to do is maybe have Ed, if you'd be kind of my patient, I'm going to walk you through not our entire process, which takes 16 hours of training and hundreds of calls over years to really master, but give you just a couple of little actionable tidbits and kind of hear the psychology. And one of the big things you'll hear from me is it's not about offering a virtual consultation. It's about directing them, as Ed said, to the fact that we have a virtual consultation and it is your next step. It's not the option, it's what we do here. So I frame it in a way that is honest and ethical, but also guide them to that this is what's going to happen. And I will also build honest urgency. Now, some of you guys are booked out 5 months, but some of you guys may only have a couple weeks of patience or whatever. And we don't have to lie or be dishonest about that. We can build honest urgency. So normally at this point in the call, we've already built some rapport. We have a clear understanding of their goals and what they want. Maybe we've already built up the doctor a little bit and how wonderful he is and his experience. We've given them a little bit of idea of downtime. They know they need a week off of work or 2 days off of work or 2 weeks. And I'm going to pick up from giving them a time frame and giving them a price range, and then asking them their time frame, and then walking them through the virtual consultation. Well, great. Now that Ed, you have a little bit of an idea of downtime. In terms of pricing, broadly on the high end, this procedure can range about as high as $10,000. On the low end, maybe around $8,000. Most tend to be somewhere in the middle, $8,500, $9,500, somewhere in that range. Now, Ed, now that you have a sense of pricing and you have a sense of healing time, assuming you were to love Dr. Smith, do you have any sort of time frame in mind as to when you'd hope to have the procedure? Assuming the whole COVID thing passes and things basically get back to normal, Ed, when were you thinking about?
Well, sure. I mean, I guess ideally, originally, I was actually kind of hoping for kind of late June, maybe right before the 4th of July kind of time, and usually get an extra day off or so. It might be a good time for me to get a little downtime. I was kind of hoping for that.
Sure. So it sounds like not quite as soon as possible as in tomorrow, but soon. You're looking at if we were open late June, early July, somewhere in that range then?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, great. Well, perfect. Well, that's excellent. I am going to tell you, we're not completely full yet for June, but I do want to be honest with you that we are busy. A lot of people would assume that we're kind of quiet around here just because of everything going on with the virus. And that's not untrue. I mean, we've been largely able to catch up on calls, and it's been a skeleton crew here for a few weeks. But what's actually happened is, we've been forced by the government to push back some of the cases a good month or 2 months. So all the stuff we already had is kind of taking up that first month or two back, if we're lucky enough to be open here in May. And then on top of that, there's a lot of pent-up demand that we're anticipating, because a lot of people didn't realize we were open, et cetera. And so we're getting a lot more leads now and a lot more calls, and that's going to really explode once we're open. So we're expecting not just a busy summer, but an incredibly busy summer. So I would like to go ahead and get your appointment scheduled as soon as possible, Ed. There's the end of my honest urgency. Now I'm going to start talking about the second part, which is the virtual consultation, and that's what we do. So great, let me go ahead and walk you through what we're gonna do next. So Ed, because you're looking fairly soon, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is get the process started. Here in our office, we have a 2-stage consultation process. Both are directly with Dr. Smith. The first stage, always try to cough in the middle, it shows naturalness, shows that you're a human. Gather yourself, then continue with call. So we do have a 2-stage process, Ed, that we do, and each of those stages is directly with Dr. Smith. The first stage is basically your strategy and planning session. This is done directly face-to-face with Doc through a virtual consultation. We schedule a Zoom or a similar structure, FaceTime or Skype or what have you. And what will happen during that is I'll spend a few minutes chatting with you and going through some information, put a name with the face to know we're over the phone right now. Second, Dr. Smith will personally meet with you on that call, on that virtual kind of video meeting. He'll do an examination. If you want to be in a private area, he'll make his recommendation, give you a plan of action, and answer any questions you have. At that point, we'll be able to get you a final quote, even though I've kind of given you a range. At that point, it's sort of decision time. If for any reason you don't love us, not the end of the world, you'd be able to continue your search, Ed. But assuming you do feel great about Dr. Smith, which I think you will, pretty much everybody does, that's when we go ahead and get you on the schedule, which we basically reserve with a simple deposit. That deposit is 20% of the total and fully refundable, Ed. So even though you collect it that day and we kind of reserve your date, you're not stuck. You don't have to keep the date. You can get your money back. You can change the date, et cetera. However, after that, assuming you have a date, we then schedule your second consultation, which is your live consultation directly with Dr. Smith. That coincides, to avoid you driving up and back a million times, directly with your preoperative appointment. So you come in that day, you meet with the nurse, you do your height, weight, do the paperwork and all that. You meet directly with Dr. Smith face-to-face and just make sure you've got all your I's dotted and T's crossed. And then, of course, even a third time, you'll meet with Doc, the day of surgery and so on before you get thrown into everything. Now, does that whole process make sense to you, Ed? And again, assuming that you feel good about Smith, you can be prepared when we meet?
Yeah, no, I think that sounds great. As long as I can make sure I get that date right before 4th of July.
Wonderful. So a couple of things that I did there just to touch on. And then we'll kind of dive in on what if they ask the objection, which I know Ed can handle very well, of, well, I'll just wait to kind of come on in. I'll just come on in maybe in a month or two when you guys open. So what I've done there is built some real urgency to say, hey, these dates are not 100% full, but they're getting full. And it would be prudent of you to get on our schedule because it is going to be a busy summer. That's true in pretty much every office. Over 90% of people, according to Real Self, are still interested in the surgery they were before. We have not seen in almost any of our offices significant cancellations. Sure, one or two here or there, some people lose their jobs. It is a real thing, but not a majority. So we are going to be busy. So honest urgency. And again, secondarily, what I've gone back and done as walk them through that, you're going to go ahead and have a virtual consultation if you'd like to move forward. That's our process here. That's how we do it. And the one analogy that I give to folks that find this to be a little foreign is we have practices that exclusively do phone evaluations and video consults because almost everybody comes from out of area or out of state. This is how they did it 5 years ago. This is how they did it a year ago. We have other offices that do it the normal way, which is to go in and meet with people live. And there's other big corporations. When you think about the Sona Bellows, or you think about the old Lifestyle Lift, you think about Bosley for Men or Hair Care, Hair Club or whatever, a lot of those offices, you don't even meet the doctor, which I always thought was really odd. You meet the doctor like the day of surgery, and that's their normal. So the patient doesn't have an idea of what normal is. What we're doing is guiding them and saying, our normal is we have 2 consults. One's virtual, one's live. Both are with doc, and this is the process. So by not acting weak, by not acting as if it's a request, but by rather guiding them through directive language, we're able to really shift the percentage of people that are comfortable with the virtual consult, that know that we're going to handhold them through the whole process, that we're used to this process, is what we do here, and they simply acquiesce and move forward because they're just as interested as they were before. They just hadn't anticipated the virtual consultation. Any addition to that before I ask you the question we were about to ask, Ed?
Well, no, I was going to actually give sort of the counterpoint, which is essentially that we're seeing a huge, massive difference in the nuance between being passive and being directive, right? We're not ever going to be aggressive, right? We're not ever going to say, oh my gosh, you need to give us your deposit right now because we're basically full for the rest of the year. And then maybe you'll be lucky enough to get a virtual consult. It's not what we're saying. Yeah, we're also not saying, and what we're seeing is even some top practices had, some of the best patient care coordinators, I think, on earth that routinely book 90% plus on the spot, same day booking ratios for $10,000 to $50,000 surgeries, all of a sudden got a little bit thrown, and we had to make sure that they were being more directive and not so much passive. And it's the simple difference between saying, so in order to get that date, you do have the option of actually having a virtual consultation where you can meet with the doctor. Is that something you want to take advantage of? And they would open it up for the patient to say, nah, I'll just wait. And so then all of a sudden we have an objection that we have to handle. Whereas if we're simply saying, as you said, so what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to schedule your virtual consultation as the first step. And just saying, this is how we do it. And in some cases, it's a little bit of a mental trick, right? Because for a lot of practices, this is brand new for them. They just downloaded Zoom. They've never done a virtual consultation before. And so it is new to them, and they think it's new to the patient. But as you said, this is our reality. So you actually have to go into it and trick your brain into saying, we've never actually done live consults before. We've just always done it this way. We've always done virtual consults and live pre-ops once you have a date reserved.
So that leads to kind of the second question, and which is there's going to be a small percentage of people who are listening, but they're not processing, right? And they heard what you said and you covered it and you actually handled the objection of why would I wait? And the answer, of course, is, well, gosh, you're going to miss your date. First of all, we're having a busy summer. I just told you that, Susie. But some people by nature, the phone's blaring, the TV's blaring, they got kids running around in the background, they just don't process what you said. And they'll sort of ask almost a different version of the same objection, which is, oh yeah, that all sounds great, Ed, thanks so much. Hey, you know what though? I'll probably just wait. And is that okay? I'll just maybe check in with you in June or something. I'll just do it when we're open. And so what do we have to counter that in an honest and ethical fashion as to why it still makes sense to do that virtual consult if maybe their preference would be just to kind of come on in?
Sure. Well, as we always say, no matter what the objection is, agree with them, because what they're saying largely makes sense. Of course, you do want to see the doctor live. The doctor will need to see you live. That makes sense. So we do need to agree with them. Then we're going to want to make sure that we give them a reasonable solution, rebuild the urgency, and then re-ask to go ahead and schedule the virtual consultation. So it probably sounds something like this, which is, John, I totally understand. Sounds like you got your hands full over there. And so, I totally get it that you'll actually want to be able to meet with the doctor. And as I mentioned, that is absolutely part of the process. He is going to need to see you, and we're looking forward to seeing you. Trust me, we wish we could have you in today, but heck, we can't. But as soon as we're able to, we're going to be scheduling those appointments. And because our actual surgical schedule, though, because we are planning to come back, around May 18th. And so beyond that, we are actually booking well into June. And if you're hoping to get that end of June date, we actually wouldn't be able to wait until you actually come in if you're hoping to reserve that type of date, simply because if you wait until, say, May 18th or thereafter, we're going to be booking well into July and even August. So I'm happy to look at alternative dates with you if you want to look later in the year or into next year. But if you mentioned that sort of July 4th weekend does work well for you, the next step would be for us to go ahead and schedule your virtual consultation at a specific time. And of course, we'll be set, and it'll be very much like a live consultation. And so we're going to meet with me. You're going to meet with the doctor at length based on his experience, having done thousands of cases, being double board certified. He will know nearly exactly what you're going to be a good candidate for, answer all of your questions. It's extremely thorough. And then, of course, we'll finish up, and that'll be the opportunity to go ahead and reserve the date. So with that all said, Jon, should we go ahead? Would that be comfortable for you to actually have that virtual consultation, come prepared, be able to reserve the date, knowing that you'll be able to meet the doctor live thereafter?
Yeah, absolutely. And so what Ed is doing is great. It's just kind of, in a lot of ways, it's re-explaining the same thing in different words, but also doing so in a sensitive way where we're listening to them and help them understand we're hearing them, but also giving them a logical reasoning versus just we want you to, or we're not that busy or whatever, but really giving reasoning. And remember, there's always additional tools in your toolbox. So it's possible that they might say, well, maybe I'll just wait and do it in September. Maybe I'll just do it in Christmas time. So remember, you have other tools at your disposal. Just a couple little tidbits to add to that. The same process that Ed has already said, you can just replay this podcast a couple times and listen to it. But what are little things we can add? Well, one of the things that we actually recommend for most practices, if you're fairly busy, if you're one of the fortunate ones that's booked out 3 weeks to 6 weeks or more upon reopening, I would be planning to have a little bit of a price increase as we reopen. But as a courtesy to the patient, what we want to do is grandfather them in to current pricing as a thank you for booking now. So even someone who maybe wants Thanksgiving and says, I'm more than happy to wait to see you live, I'd say, well, certainly whatever you wish, whenever you're ready, we're ready. Think of me as your patient concierge. We could definitely check in with you a little later. We're not that full for Thanksgiving, although it is probably the second or third busiest week of the year. So I do recommend booking in advance, but I'm not going to tell you we're full. What I will mention to you, Bob, is that A, it is possible your date goes, but more importantly, if you did want to actually take advantage of the fact that you're bored in the house and you're in the house bored, you got nothing to do, we can go ahead and get your virtual consultation scheduled. I can go ahead and get you grandfathered into our current pricing before Dr. Smith raises it. We are anticipating, I don't know if it's a small or a big one, and we may even have a second one before Thanksgiving, a price increase. Like I said, we're actually busy, not busy, strangely and interestingly. Counterintuitively, we are pretty full. And I may be able to save you several $100s to several $1,000s off our current rates if you wanted to get pre-booked. So I'm going to also be mentioning that even as someone who wants June, say, hey, Mrs. Smith, not only do you want to probably get going just because we may not have those dates available, as Ed eloquently stated, but also the prices very well may be more, and likely will be more, but I can always grandfather you in. And because the deposit is refundable, which we strongly recommend out there, until 3 weeks prior, we can go ahead and always give you a refund if you reconsider or change your date if something goes on. If they ask about COVID, well, I don't even know what with COVID right now, what's going to happen. And I guess that's true. But I always joke around, everything's a possibility all the time. It's like someone 6 years ago saying, I'd love to book for the summer of 2008, but I don't know if World War III is going to happen. I just don't know. And technically they don't. It could have broken out. It is unlikely. We are prayerful that it will not be. Imagine if someone in January said to you, Jon, I'd like to book for March because job's going well and I've got some time off of work, but I'm wondering whether or not there's going to be a global pandemic right around late March, mid-March. Well, we'd have laughed them out of the room. The reality is no one knows if they're going to have a job during great times or bad times. No one knows if they're going to be alive tomorrow. No one knows anything at all. So we're always making some assumptions. So what I do is I work that right in. So Mrs. Smith, based on everything you've heard about healing, knowing the price range, assuming that you feel good about the doctor and assuming this COVID thing passes, when were you thinking about? So there's some nuance in there. If you listen through some of our word tracks, our cycles there, what we know is happening is even in Long Island, we have practices at double-digit consults last week, booked every single one of them for surgery. In any case, I think we had a short computer glitch there. I don't know if that'll be edited in or edited out, but the reality is there's lots of little nuance. If you review that podcast, it'll kind of create that urgency and help you get through. And that's why we're seeing these offices have the success they're having, not just like Long Island, like I mentioned, but Places like LA, hard hit places, the worst hit places are booking in many, many cases double J consults and booking their surgery. So we've really just been sitting at home, kind of bored, coming up with these word tracks. It's what we do for a living. So we had all kinds of ideas from back in '08 and other difficult times and hurricanes here in Florida and Texas and everything we had to work people through when they go through various catastrophes, wildfires in California, all kinds of people go through all kinds of catastrophes, and we work through them using these same principles and concepts, and they work. But it's fun to be bored. I mean, personally, I've had all kinds of time. I don't know about you, Ed.
God, I've been pretty bored. It's funny. I was actually wondering, I know a lot of people are bored right now. And I thought to myself, my God, what were my parents doing when they were bored, like before the internet, And I asked my 26 brothers and sisters, they had no idea either. That's where I take a sip.
Oh, Edward. Yeah, but I mean, I've been at home too, and there's certain days, just as an aside before we move on to the next topic, I was bored. I mean, after 24 hours of being bored yesterday, I called it a day.
I never want to laugh. I don't want to laugh at it.
But we prepare it. Well, they say like on Saturday Night Live shows like that, they sometimes just work in a joke that was like written and they didn't tell the actor and they just read the cue card. So I like to surprise you with a little something. So good. So I think we talked a little bit about that, and just as a couple little asides before we kind of talk about I guess it leads into the idea of the process of reopening.
Yep.
I guess the way I think about the reopening is there's going to be all kinds of things. We all know that we're super excited to get open. We'll bring back as many employees as we can. Maybe you didn't let anyone go, or you didn't have any furloughs. Hopefully, we were fortunate enough to retain 100% of our people at 100% of pay. We're hoping that all of our clients, all the coordinators, I think other than one or two, are completely fully employed. So we're excited about that. But whatever challenges you had to go through, whether it was retaining everyone, whether it was furloughing and trying to just make ends meet until such time you could get reopened, we're getting to that point. And a couple little asides I want to mention besides tips that we're going to give you on how to reopen effectively to maximize sales and safety is I can tell you personally, I use LinkedIn a lot, which is a social media network that most people just kind of associate with like a job board or some business news, but I use it a lot the way other people use Facebook or Instagram. And I can tell you over the last 7 days, my LinkedIn profile has been viewed 8,600 times more than the week before. I'm up 8,600%. And a lot of that is just conversation and people asking questions, but a lot of it also are the massive, huge volume of people who were laid off. Every medical device rep, every pharmaceutical rep, every ADP kind of employee, every top sales group at any major corporation have had massive layoffs, it seems. And so what that means for you as a practice is that the 12-year run is over. In 2008, if you were an employer, you basically could do anything to an employee and pay them anything you wanted and be as bad of a manager as possible. And most of them just sat there and took it, which I don't condone or recommend. But you could have gotten away with it. And then by 2010, it was a little better. And 2012 was a little better. 2016 was way better. And it got to a point by the end of 2019, heading into 2020, where it was the opposite. Almost every decent person had a job. It was almost impossible to find great talent. We got constant calls from doctors saying, can you help me find someone better? Who I have is bad. They're on drugs. They're stealing. They're not a good employee. They can't sell. They can't do their job well. They keep quitting. They got scooped up by someone else for twice the money. And it became the employee's ability to basically write their ticket. They say, if you don't give me this, I'm leaving. And I don't condone that either. And so one of the things we've preached for 12 straight years is that we should be always paying market average plus a little bit. We should always be identifying, finding, and retaining top talent. And that is why when this went down, having been through '08, having been through tough times in many markets, we worked with our doctors to say, how can you retain your coordinators? I was just on the phone, like I said, doing a Real Self podcast, and one of the employees there was talking with what they consider the very best patient coordinator they know in America. She averages an 80% booking ratio of all surgeries, is an honest and hardworking individual. And she was furloughed and then fully laid off within 1 week of hearing about COVID, before the office had even officially closed. And in a way where the doctors who were multimillionaires still made that decision to just cut their losses, goodbye. And had they waited a little bit, they may have been able to get their PPP. And I know not everyone has gotten that yet, and there's round 2, and people don't trust things. I've already applied, been approved, and received ours, by the way, so it is real and it will come through eventually. But even if that isn't enough to completely save everybody, completely make everything perfect, these doctors had jumped to a really quick conclusion, and that person's not going back anymore and already has job offers on the table, because there's always going to be a market for the best salespeople, the best coordinators, the best managers in America, just like it's going to be exceedingly difficult for lower quality employees to really get work. So what we have going for us for the first time in 12 years is if you've got a mediocre team, if you've got people who don't appreciate their job, if you have people who really aren't rising to the occasion, there is a glut of superb, amazing individuals that are now willing to accept a new position. Now, I don't recommend you go out and give them what they're willing to accept, which will be much less than it was before. And every month that passes, they don't get a job, it'll be worse. What I actually recommend is you find the best in the world and you look them in the face and you say, I'm actually going to pay you market average plus a little bit when I don't have to, so that the next time things are bad again, you remember what I did for you when times weren't good for you. And that's how you build relationships, you build great talent, and you retain them for the long run. And knock on wood, if I may say, why we have not had any turnover, we haven't laid anyone off, we have superb people, and our sales are still rising. And we're going to have a growth year this year in spite of this thing. So get out there if you're looking for more people. They're out there. It's a great time to hire. If you're not sure how to identify them, or you want them to be trained as well as ours, contact YellowTelescope and we can help you. But that's part of reopening, is making sure you've retained. And if not, reach out and apologize and beg and do whatever you can to get back the great people you have. And if they're not great, go out and find superb people so you reopen with gumption and power.
Well, and the message that we've also very well said, John, and what we've also been saying to the folks that are still employed, right? The folks that did not get furloughed, that had the boss, that had the forethought to keep them, that had the loyalty, right? We would say loyalty is a two-way street. And so as we'll be talking about, there are such proactive things that the team can be doing, right? Where even if maybe the patient care coordinator and the office manager and maybe a handful of other people, like the skeleton crew that you were speaking of, the people who have remained are still working, it's actually their responsibility. And now, because the doctor or the ownership of the practice has said, we're going to keep you on board, well, it's not just work from home part-time, it's work from home double time. And there are such proactive things that they can be doing, from reaching out to the entire database to fill the schedule, from getting ahead on a lot of the projects and the reorganization, as well as really proactively working with the leadership of the practice to talk about how to safely bring patients back in, as we'll talk about. But it's a two-way street, because if you didn't get laid off, in so many ways, you're so very lucky. Not to mention, thank your lucky stars that you don't work for a restaurant group or an airline or a travel agency, because there are so many other industries that are going to be so worse hit than cosmetic medicine and plastic surgery, because there's going to be demand. Now, will there be a maybe slight downtick, long term, I think maybe due to the economics? Potentially, sure. But that's when the right processes and the right people become that much more important. When we talk about, we were managing practice in 2008, 2009, 2010, and how we've been preaching for the last half decade, that's going to happen again. When times are good, you don't have to be good. But when times are tough is when it's so important that you have the very best people, the very best processes to actually remain competitive, not even in an environment where some of your competition went out of business, but to really be able to attract the patients that are still interested, because they are. And what we're seeing from patient coordinators who are having to reschedule patients even into the future, very few, if any, patients are giving us any pushback. We've had an extremely negligible rate of cancellation or refund for any sort of surgical services or non-surgical treatments. And again, sure that we may see a handful here and there, of course, down the line, but people are still going to want to get this done. I mean, goodness, I've been saying, even though I shaved my beard for the first time in 2 years, I'm dying for a haircut. And, I'd love to get one of those. We're hearing from patients that are like, can I please come in for my Botox? I look like myself and I don't like it. So they're dying to get back in. People are going to want to still achieve these goals. And so I think that while so many doctors always like to say things like, well, at least I keep a good reconstructive business because it's recession proof. And I would argue that now more than ever, cosmetic medicine is one of the more recession proof industries or specialties, because it's more pervasive. Of course, we are also going to see greater interest in maybe potentially things that are non-surgical, maybe due to lower risk, or maybe even due to lower cost options or lower recovery options. and things that aren't as time consuming that require one-on-one contact. So those are some of the things that we're going to see sort of as a return to normalcy. But in a greater, broader context, anybody who works in this industry and is thinking about things the right way for the long term, the future, are some of the luckiest people in this economy.
Yeah, and I'm filling a couple of positions right now that we have open, and it's interesting. One of the big things that I ask is, why would you like to join this industry? What are you excited about? A lot of them are passionate about aesthetics and beauty and so forth, but a lot of them say, I'm really looking for an industry that I feel more stable in, and I feel like this is one of those places that's going to remain that way and keep growing. And again, we've got data showing that that's going to be the case. And how true it is. And one of the other things I kind of talk about is we have to get away from the news cycle, whatever your politics. If you like CNN or you like Fox News or MSNBC, or you like whatever, great. But there's so much information from all of them preaching whatever it is they wish to preach. And some of it has to end up true, but that means the other one's wrong and we don't really know who's who. What I do know is what we show in the data. I know that we talk with hundreds of practices. I know we manage dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And we know they are booked. We know the patients are buying. We know that people are following the process and making those 100 calls a day and really getting the word out there are getting the success, no matter what anyone else says on the news or whatever anyone's opinion is. And the reason I believe that is there's no question that there's sort of a shrinking of the pie that's going to happen. We're going to go from the biggest pie we've had in 12 years to maybe 80 or 90% of the size of that pie. But we also are going to have a certain number of plastic surgeons, med spas, and other practitioners go out of business. And they're going to, so the number of doctors and practitioners and providers will get smaller. And also we know the cream rises to the top, which is to say if there's 20% less consulting clients available in America for the next year, but 15% of the consultants just close up shop and take a job somewhere, or 30%, and we know we're the very best at what we do, which I hope we are, then we're going to keep growing anyway, because we're going to get not the whole pie, we're going to get our slice of the pie, keep taking market share. And that's why we see doctors that have 130 cases booked ahead of them, 200 cases booked ahead of them. I have one doctor who's booked until September right now. He's working 7 days a week if they open May 1, 6 days a week if he's open in June, and then he might get back to just the typical 5-day-a-week job, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no question, there's an absolute glut of opportunity for the right people if you stick with it. Now let's talk, because we just have a few minutes left, to go through just some real quick tips on reopening and how to do so in a way that makes sense, both SENSE and CENTS, I guess. Wow, that actually came out okay, I think, at the end. So I wanted to just frame the conversation. Maybe, Ed, you can kind of run through a number of ideas, but let's talk a little bit about it. First of all, philosophically, it goes without saying the number one priority for your practice is to protect your patients and your staff and yourself. And so there's certain precautions you have to do from a safety standpoint. And similarly, there's a certain number of things that you've always wanted to do in terms of service to make sure people feel good and have great outcomes and are happy with the experience and give you a 5-star Google review or Yelp or whatever else. However, what's interesting is, to me, those two things add up to sales. And sometimes we think of sales as separate from service, or sales as very different than safety, and almost the opposite. They say, well, if we book more cases, it could get less safe. I think the total opposite. I think that if you have the most safe environment with the highest level of service, people are going to want to buy from you the most in this environment, because they're itching for their Botox. When you put your posts up about how badly everybody wants Botox, they comment, oh my gosh, I've got to go in for this. Just like Ed said about his haircut. Lord knows I need one. I'm going big, full beard right now. We'll see what happens. So yeah, there's that desire. But when push comes to shove and they say, oh my gosh, I got to get in my car and go somewhere right now. I've been pent up in my apartment or my home for a few months. They're going to think twice about whether it's a good use of their very, very, very minor risk, but a risk nonetheless. And that could be true for the next 2 years if they don't have a full vaccine. So how do we make sure that we are staying safe, which some of that's up to you guys out there. We're not doctors. We don't have all the answers. Some of the things we say on this podcast may be a little different next time we speak. And we certainly recommend you talk to your lawyers, you would talk to other medical professionals, and you pick the very most safe things that work as we learn more. But what we can do is make sure that we have a protocol in place and that we also get the word out in a heavy manner to everyone out there what we're doing, so that they say, I not only want these services or surgeries or treatments, but I feel really good and safe about going there. So that's the mindset towards it. How do we do it, Edward?
Well, I actually wanted to quote one of our clients that I spoke to just yesterday morning, who said, under normal circumstances, our office is a safer place to go than the grocery store. And so it's interesting because, of course, in a lot of cities where you've got the essential businesses that are open, right, and people are going to buy food, they're still surrounded by people despite the 6 feet, but you're in a large building with still hundreds of people, even if it's, they've thinned out the crowds. Whereas even going to a medical office.
Of gently rubbed fruits.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. That there's a lot of COVID. Make sure you wash your vegetables, please, as soon as you bring them home. That's a different podcast.
Or where to really know if the cantaloupe is ripe. It's not even about touching it. You want to sniff its nethers, like the little edgy bit, and see if it has a sweetness to it. But that requires sniffing the actual coronavirus off the melon into your nose.
Right, which is tough with your bandana on, So. So
no one knows what melons they're getting right now. No one has any idea if their melon is sweet. It's a complete cantaloupe crapshoot.
That's exactly right. Cantaloupe roulette. So even if, in fact, actually, I was going to say, I'd love Real Self to do a study that, would you skip a trip to the grocery store to get your Botox? I think that would be an interesting study. Because when you talk about people taking the small amount of risk.
Good social media posts. That's gold. We're going to get that over to our ice cream team to start thinking about crafting posts about nice.
Oh, yeah. See, this is why we do this. It's just basically a creative brainstorm session. When we talk about actually coming back to the office, right? Now, again, like you said, there are myriad things that we do on a regular basis, from changing gloves between patients, right? No doctor wears the same pair of gloves all day. Right? You change those.
You reuse expensive things. You reuse a needle, sure. You use some Botox for multiple patients out of the same vial. That's good business.
Yeah, well, especially if they're family. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we can make sure that we're still doing the basic things, right? And so even without a pandemic or a highly infectious disease that's circulating around the world, our offices are still going to be some of the best places to go because there's low population counts, not a ton of people in there. It's one-on-one treatments typically, or 2 people in the room or something like that. It's a very sterile environment, etc. Now, people forget that though, because in this world, often, their injectables and even their cosmetic surgery, things like breast augmentations are becoming more and more commoditized in the minds of the consumer. And so they don't necessarily even equate it with the sort of risk that they may even have without a pandemic. But of course, now people are afraid to walk outside to go to the mailbox, let alone drive to get their cosmetic surgery. And even though they want to do that, we've got to make them feel good about it. And so some of the things that we've been seeing in talking to practices, because we're very actively looking directly at their upcoming schedules for surgery, but also for in-office. And so when we talk about practices that are full for the first 2 to 4 weeks in the spa side of their practice, it's not full like it was in February, because what we're looking at is staggering patients. We're looking at slightly longer appointments typically, and we're having the team get together with really what the staff is comfortable with. And most of the practice ownership, the doctors themselves are saying to their nurses, to their medical assistants, to their PAs, what are you going to be comfortable with? What do you need to feel comfortable treating, first and foremost? And so part of it is going to be based on availability of PPE, and things like that. And so they are getting somewhat creative. But for example, we are looking at where previously we've done podcasts and our previous Reception Scope webinars, and work with our clients on staggering med spa patients, for example, where on a typical day you might have a new Botox patient come in at 9 a.m. and treat them while your new filler patient is numbing in the other room, while you're then going in at 9:30 into the next Botox patients after you've done the injection, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And so some of the things that practices are considering are longer appointments, number one, so that they are actually not having as much crisscross with people coming in and out. That may change volume somewhat, but it also does, again, give you the ability to book out just slightly further, allowing you to build great urgency to book out. And then, of course, like we were talking about with price increases in surgery, if you're booked out for 8+ weeks for surgery, you do have the availability, the ability to raise prices. Similarly, it's going to be the same thing for your med spa or anything on the non-surgical side. Second of all, of course, we're even talking about.
If I may, Ed, just to kind of touch on that.
You may, please.
One little addition, or I guess 2 little additions to that. So yeah, there's no question, obviously, if you had 650 people coming in a morning, it just may not be realistic. And like you said, you have to kind of create that space. But what we're also saying is, to be quite honest, we've all had quite a break. It may not have been the most exciting break, may not have included a daiquiri and a Caribbean beach kind of break, but we've been sitting at home. And so quite honestly, I see a lot of my surgeons very much plan to work a little later. Come in a little earlier. Maybe if they're younger and can do so, or the kids' schedule works out, some of them are doing Saturdays or Sundays. And similarly, when I look at our practitioners, our injectors, our estheticians, you know, we've had a nice break. I think we're all kind of ready to go do something. So one of the other ways they're getting all those patients in, like you said, is you can raise fees a little bit if you're booked out because you have the license to do so, which may be a good way to do it in general. Less patients paying more is just as profitable as more patients paying less. But whether you do that or not, just simply saying, hey, for a short while, for a month or two, as things get figured out, while we become more efficient, so we'll get faster and we'll learn how to sterilize the rooms and do things quicker. You know, maybe instead of leaving at 4:45, maybe if possible in some of the offices, they are staying a little later. They're coming in a little earlier. They can get in a handful more patients. The doctors may be jumping in and doing some injectables and doing some treatments as well, even if he or she doesn't normally do quite as many of those and leaves them for the injector, et cetera. Maybe even give them the same commission. Say, I'm just doing this to help the team, but I want to make sure that people get serviced and so forth. So just a couple little additions to that idea. What else you got for me? Number 2.
Well, of course, one of the things we think about is the office waiting room, because nothing says safety like 15 people sitting shoulder to shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got to think about how to manage that. And there's some pretty basic things here, right? You know, we're even talking about, you know, spreading out seats within the waiting room. Obviously, there should be hand sanitizer available immediately. If you have the availability of the PPEs, providing them for your patients. I've had practices who have suggested even during a confirmation call or a reminder call for an appointment, and even in an email, politely asking patients to bring their own face covering. We're also having the instructions to maybe wait in the car, or for our more urban practices, wait out on the sidewalk, weather permitting, or in the lobby, and await a text for as soon as your room is ready, so that there is no waiting within the office space. We can just bring you right in. Depending on your office location and the type of facility that you have, of course, the number of rooms you have is going to differ. You know, our practices on Park Avenue are going to have a little bit of a different sort of experience probably than suburban Houston, for example, right? Where you might not just have 10,000 square feet to play with. So it depends on that. But also, you might be on the 5th floor, for example, and you might not necessarily want a crowded elevator. So also consider opening the stairwell. And then when you think about the patient flow throughout the practice, I'm recommending actually doing a social distancing dress rehearsal. So the staff that's actually going to be coming in prior to actually officially opening the doors, you should be having your first live team meeting probably in a while. And after having gone through the schedule day by day together as a team, mapping things out, and then actually doing a dress rehearsal. So if you have Susie Smith, the Botox coming in, well, you know, Sally the injector is going to play Susie Smith. And she's going to walk in, and we're actually going to make sure that there's enough space between people, and then she goes in the room and then comes out. And then also practicing some of the additional sterilization techniques for the room itself, in between each patient, etc. I could go on.
Yeah, so lots of great ideas quickly, and I agree with all of them. There's certainly no question the vast majority of practices, whether it is someone that needs to find a place to walk around, or whether it's in the most of the offices that have parking lots, certainly call us when you arrive, stay in your car, listen to tunes, rock out. The new Strokes is out on vinyl. I just got it. Basquiat. I think it's Basquiat, right? Is that the artist?
Oh, yes. Oh, I was thinking about it.
Designed the cover to the album, so it's very artistic.
Oh, yeah. Well, I also love that the title of the album is The New Normal. How apropos.
Yeah, the new abnormal, indeed. Yeah. And so anyway, I've got it. It's great. That's an aside. What the heck was I just talking about?
Rocking out the Strokes while you're waiting for your text at the room.
There it is. Rock out to the Strokes while you're waiting. So yeah, waiting in the car is so important. Simply sending them a text. They're going to love that. I would love to be texted when it's my time, and then they just come right up and there's no wait. I think that's a really key one. A couple other things that I've heard of that you can, again, kind of workshop, as you'd say, and sort of do a dress up and role play. It reminds me of our good friends out at Blackhawk Plastic Surgery, Dr. Ronin Crew. I envision them, of course, dressing up. They have this video. You got to look it up on YouTube of them all dressed up like superheroes and doing this super professional video. It's amazing. So you get in your superhero costumes and you kind of pretend to be whoever you're going to be. But in any case, I digress. Two other things. One is we've had doctors talk about placing tape on the floors at appropriate places where there is risk for mixing or having poor distancing or just, whatever, to make sure that we have those distances worked out. And then last, most follow-ups, most aesthetic follow-ups for people who want minor checkups, et cetera, most surgical follow-ups, can be moved virtual. There's not a huge difference in seeing someone live or not. Now, if it's then deemed that they need to be brought in live, you can usually have space on your schedule to bring them in the next day or even later that day if there's something wrong, et cetera. And the doctors, of course, know which types of appointments are realistic to be done live versus virtual. But doing a lot of virtual checkups, actually asking yourself, do we actually need this person here live? Well, to perform Botox, yes. To perform a surgery, yes. For a preoperative appointment and breast augmentation sizing, probably yes. For an actual consultation, probably no. For a regular 6-week, hey, how's everything going? I love my nose, probably not. Maybe, probably depends on the doctor or the particular patient, how they're healing. So moving things virtual. And then last, on consultations, moving them virtual. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, there will be some people who maybe, for example, are having a facelift. Maybe they're 65 years old. Maybe they've had a couple of heart surgeries and they're in basically good health, but they're a little skittish. They may simply wish for or prefer a virtual consultation. And then others, we may just say, I'd actually prefer, as long as you're doing a simple upper blepharoplasty consult, that we do it virtually. So we're also recommending is, instead of just spacing things out or seeing less people, you can have every other patient consultation booked live. So if you've got a noon for a breast dog, that would really benefit because A, she's young, she's healthy, she needs to do sizing, you want to do some imaging in your Vectra or whatever you have. Well, then at 12:30 or 1 or whenever your next appointment is, you might have that one be your aging face patient who's seeking, a facelift that can largely be done virtually, or an out-of-state patient who's looking for whatever they're looking for. And then we go back to our live patients. That way, even if you're running late and the day gets away from you, you don't have people waiting in the lobby, you don't have people stuck in their cars, et cetera. There will be other ideas coming along. Obviously, there are doctors that before surgery are going to be testing, just initial testing to at least eliminate people who do have a fever. That doesn't mean that people can't have it, but at least it minimizes that chance. It takes away some of that. With time, there'll be more testing. We recommend all of the personnel get antibody tested as well over time as soon as those become more available on the markets. If someone's already had it, they're at least not guaranteed, but they're significantly more likely to be basically immune or likely to be immune. Time will tell if that's officially the case. There's lots of great ideas coming out. The most important thing is with all those ideas, and I bet you guys could send us a lot more. We'd love to hear from you at info@yellowtelescope.com on any smart ideas you have that we can share with other people. I always say if you give away one thing, we'll give you back 1,000. But the real thing is, how do you get the word out? Because as we talked about before, it starts with safety. But if nobody knows that you're safe, they just may not want to call. They just may not want to come in. So you need to record a video as the doctor, not in a woe is me weak fashion, but an absolutely confident fashion, outlining what you're doing. And you need to send that out in an email blast, which only has a 15 or 20% open rate, which means 85% of your database that even have emails won't even see it, but it's a start. You want to put that on your social media in all of your different formats, which again is only a start, everybody sees it. You want all of your patient coordinators trained on how to explain this to every new patient lead, every old patient lead, and you probably want some information, that video posted to your website, to say how we're able to be open safely in a positive way. So it's not, hey guys, this was really rough. We're very slow and we're really hoping to book some surgery this year, Ed. Gosh, I mean, I probably wouldn't call us yet because, this is terrible. Anyway, if you do want to come in, I guess we'll see you, but we'll wash our hands. It definitely needs to be the truth. And the truth is, hey, Ed, hey, everyone, hey, the world, it's Dr. Smith. First of all, we are super excited to announce that we are reopening on May 15th or whatever it might be, or June 1st or whatever. I'm super excited that we're opening on May 18th. And I want to actually come at you with just some general information. First of all, we are super pleased that we are back. Our thoughts are with all of you. We're very sensitive to the situation. We pray and hope that you and yours are healthy and happy. Assuming they are, we'd love to serve you. We'd love to have you in our practice. And actually, it is important you get in touch as soon as possible because we are extremely busy. Not only is there pent up demand from the last basically 3 months of people being kind of held back, but we also had to move some of our cases back to support our local hospitals and per the government's request. So we actually have a month or two of surgery already booked up. And then on top of that, we're expecting just a ton of inquiries here, like I said, because of that pent up demand. But the purpose of this message is not just to say, get in touch ASAP if you wish to be served, but also let you know some of the precautions that we're taking, because although we know we're reopened, we don't want you to think that we take your safety any less seriously. So first of all, we absolutely already and always have taken every safety precaution. First of all, while you guys weren't worried about coronavirus 2 years ago, we still worried about things like MRSA and other diseases and infection. And so we've always operated one of the safest places in the country. We have our own Quad A or AAA certified operating suite right here on site, clean, sterile. We wore masks before you were supposed to wear a mask. We sterilized the area before you were asked to sterilize. So that's just part of our normal protocol. In addition, when you arrive at our offices, you will be contacting us from your car to let us know you've arrived. Our team, our lovely team up front, will be texting you when your room is ready. That room will have been sterilized. That means antimicrobial spray. That means every surface wiped down. That means time waiting for that room to become completely sterilized before you bring in. You'll be socially distanced within our practice. If you have friends or family, they'll be waiting in a socially distanced waiting room. Our staff will be wearing masks just as an extra precautionary measure. We'll have extra PPE available for you if you so choose. We're also doing A and B and C and D and X and Y and Z. We can't wait to see you. We're excited to have you back, and it's going to be a great, great summer, so get in touch. When you record the message like that and you start getting the word out, you coach your coordinators to get that word out, you A, will deliver that safe environment, which is the most important thing. B, you will deliver an amazing service experience where they leave there saying, I think I got clean just walking into the place, felt like I took a shower. And that combination of service and safety actually equals what we want, which is sales. So they dovetail. You hear me?
I'm with you. Let's get the message out. I think probably the next thing to think about is how do you actually get it out, right? Now, of course, you've recorded the video. And as we talked about from a marketing perspective, it's not or, right? Don't do it on social media or YouTube, right? Or an email blast, right? It's going to be this and this and this and this and this. So
and look into, get in touch with us. We need a recommendation for text messaging options in a HIPAA compliant, high-tech compliant fashion, but texts get open at 99% rate versus emails at 15%. So get it out in mass text as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as on the front page and the homepage of your website, as well as onto YouTube, as well as onto social media, as well as into an email blast, as well as, you know, having all of your coordinators have a link that they can email to patients in their confirmation appointment, email, et cetera. So just blanket the message out because it's going to create additional demand for the patients who have already got the interest in getting treated.
It's really true. And yeah, on the marketing front, it kind of leads to the last little snippet. I just had a minute I wanted to mention on this just for those people listening, our loyal followers and our new visitors. In addition to signing up for the podcast in your Spotify or iTunes or other stores, signing up for our complimentary educational newsletters at YellowTelescope.com, icecreamsocialmedia.com, again, ISCREAM, like a shouting ice cream cone on an iMac, icecreamsocialmedia.com, and SEOversite.com, which is SEO, like search engine optimization, VERSITE.com. In addition to all the free stuff that we have, I've got to tell you, our other businesses are doing very, very well right now. YellowTelescope, we're currently booked out for long-term consulting clients till Q4. You do actually need to get in touch now, and the good news is you have time at least for the conversation. I know nobody wants to spend any money right now. You will, I think, as you reopen. We're not really looking to get in touch with you right now so that we can sell you our services today per se. But if you think there may be some interest, I actually would encourage you guys to get in touch while you have a little free time at home. We schedule a half hour, an hour, where we talk through what your practice is doing, where the areas of opportunity are, make a strategy and plan. You know, probably a third to half of people move forward with our comprehensive services, probably a third to half at least come to our annual seminar, and then, you know, maybe a quarter to a third just say, hey, good information, I'll be in touch in the future. So now's the time to do that because even if you want to pay us for comprehensive services, you can't till basically end the year or early next year. But in case you do decide that things are going to be okay and you do want to move forward, you want to get in touch with us now so that we can docket you for end of year or early 2021 when the economy is at least a lot more back and we're heading into that next super growth phase. In essence, you want to be buying low and so forth. And we will be having another price increase at the end of the year. In any case, I want to talk about marketing, though. What is growing for us, even though not a lot of people are reaching out to sign up for YellowTelescope today, which is normal, makes sense. Our ice cream social media business is on fire right now. I had two hour-and-a-half long calls yesterday, just mapping things out. We signed another deal this morning, and or was it last night? I don't know, we got a contract over the last 24 hours again. And the reason that that's blowing up is that the one thing we do know in this environment is that we are able to help you generate a lot of leads through social media. And that ability we have through our social media company is actually only growing. People are spending more time at home staring at their phones and staring at their computers. They are more used to purchasing online now due to just the nature of Amazon's growth and social media's growth. And we have a brand new, hugely popular option with TikTok marketing that is just blowing up. I know it's just a bunch of young people. I know you don't even know what that is. I know it's really confusing to you. Just trust us on this. We can make you money with TikTok, but also Instagram continues to be great. Facebook continues to be decent. There's lots and lots of money to be made through social media marketing. And now is absolutely the time. It's the one thing you might want to start investing in if you're not already, or if you're with some Joe Schmo team or using your quote unquote web team to do social media, well, good luck with that. Or if you're using your front desk girl because she's 19, you think she knows social media, that's not going to work either. So if you're doing all the common mistakes, which is not doing social media, using your front desk person if you think she's young and knows it, paying your web team to make cookie cutter, stock photography, garbage posts that don't get you any engagement, any of those things, you got to get in touch with us and we can actually, again, strategize with you and help you understand how it works. That's a place to actually start investing and getting that word out and also driving demonstrable leads and actual profit, not just awareness and marketing for the sake of marketing, not nebulous BS, but actual results. And the second area is hopefully everyone listening to this, if you've been open for more than 6 months, has a website, you have a web team, the chances are you have an older website that isn't very good and a web team you're not that happy with. Now is a great time to research updating your website, which takes 3 to 6 months anyway. So that way you're not spending all that money necessarily up front, and getting that website live. And then also investing in a really high quality, superb, unbelievable, amazing web rankings, web agency, SEO firm to actually help you do extremely well. So the reality is your team probably in most cases isn't doing very well for you at best and is ruining your business at worst. And now's the time to get in touch with us. Again, our business is a free service, doesn't cost anything. Before you reach out to any web teams, just talk to us. We'll connect you with good people. If you like them, you hire them. It's pretty much that simple. It doesn't cost anything. So you want to be in touch with us about that process now. Now is the time to be thinking of it. It's 3 to 6 months to even get your website up. Maybe 2 if you're super fast. We're redoing YellowTelescope.com. I'm paying tens and tens of thousands of dollars for my website. I'm eating my own, I'm sipping my own Kool-Aid, so to speak. So I just wanted to have a word on marketing and let you guys know that is something right now, unless you're just going out of business, which you're not, that we really need to start talking about. I encourage you to get in touch with us through info@YellowTelescope.com, guardian@SEOversight.com, get the scoop at icecreamsocialmedia.com. Call our number 305-455-0720. I wish we could catch you at all the upcoming meetings. We're going to be preaching this at Vegas Cosmetic Surgery, and we just did it at Miami Cosmetic Surgery's inaugural event where we live here, which was a great one. But we can't do that. So this is the new way of shopping. Get in touch, and we're a one-stop shop to solve all your problems. Those are my marketing thoughts, Ed. Half sales pitch, half truth. Well, actually 100% truth and 100% sales pitch, whatever way you want to look at it, but no lies. That's the important thing. Always honest. Integrity.
Absolutely. No, I mean, we talk a lot about cost centers and profit centers, and now's the time to actually start investing in the things that will make you money. Find the opportunities, buy cheaper toilet paper, even though certainly that stock has risen.
Well, good luck, right?
but definitely invest in better people, better processes, and better marketing, and that's actually what's going to give you the foundation to return strong compared to your competition.
It's true. That's the info I have. Do you have any other, Ed?
Absolutely not. I've completely exhausted it.
Yeah, normally at this point, we tell you about all the places we're going to be appearing and speaking.
Yep.
We're going anywhere anytime soon, although we are still planning to go to AAF-PRS. If you're a facial plastic surgeon, we'll be there if it's happening. I think sometime this fall. We do have our Yellow Telescope seminar. All systems go. It's going to be amazing. Our 10th anniversary, St. Regis, Bal Harbor. We will also be at the
VCS in September.
The rescheduled VCS, Vegas Cosmetic Surgery in September, which we're super excited about. And definitely will be on program there. Faculty, I think this will be our 11th year in a row at Vegas Cosmetic Surgery. So excited, particularly to go back to that event. That's one of our babies. Or actually, it's not our baby, but we feel like we're at least a part of the family, I guess you'd say. On top of that, we are continuing to put out content. If you are not already following at Yellow Telescope and at Ice Cream Social Media and at SEO Oversight on Instagram, strongly recommend you do it. You can find me on TikTok, if you don't mind R-rated stuff and a little bit of fun, at The Real Jon Hoffenberg, which is Jon with no H. Jon Hoffenberg, Hoffenberg. You can find Ed and me on LinkedIn, Ed Searing, Syring, like syringe without an E. We are putting a lot of other newsletters out regularly if you sign up on our website. We are speaking at a bunch of upcoming meetings when they do get going again. And, a lot of other things have been great this year. Like I said, we're really proud of the fact that we were named one of South Florida's best places to work in all of South Florida by the South Florida Business Journal, which is a little bit of a brag, but also really more just about the great team that we have. We're about to head into a Zoom happy hour tonight, which will be fun. We're a little sick of Zoom, but it's pretty fun. We're doing pretty good with it. And also really excited that we do have our new book chapter out, and Dr. Corman and Dr. Furness's second edition edited optimizing your plastic surgery practice book. You can find that through Theme Publishers. We get nothing if you buy one. We really just want you to buy it. It's a great book. Lots of great authors that collaborated on that. So we got a great chapter on optimizing your practice within the business of plastic surgery. Second edition is what it's called, the business of plastic surgery, second edition, by Corman Furness. What else? We have a forthcoming chapter on social media coming out. I think that's been delayed a little bit with COVID, but Ed wrote a chapter on maximizing social media, and that's going to be in what book?
It's actually aesthetic surgery for men. So it's the practice for men, first textbook ever for plastic surgery.
Love it. So excited to see that coming out. So there's a lot of stuff in the works. We have a new Real Self podcast recorded today. That will be on Real Self University. You can go to insightcenter.realself.com to see a couple of our past articles, and make sure you sign up for Real Self University. And we've got a great podcast I just recorded today. And Ed recorded one about a month ago on your topic was kind of pre-COVID, but you were talking mostly on.
Well, it was actually sort of a little bit of my experience as a patient care coordinator and how we work with practices through that. And had a lot of fun doing that with Eva. It was great. And I think she told me at this point, like, I don't know, hundreds of views, something like that. So thanks for listening. Hope it helps.
Well, absolutely. Well, appreciate everyone tuning in. We thank Informed Markets and so on for the opportunity to chat with them a little bit as well and kind of get this information out through them. But 25 is in the books. I look forward to seeing you on the Zoom happy hour. And all I think we need to do is have Jill play us out. Correct, Ed?
I believe that's the case. See you shortly. And thanks for joining us, everybody.
See you, good buddy. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate your time.
Cheers.